Welcome back to Undulations. So this video is the second part of my discussion of synth and gear posts that I put daily onto Instagram for the January event. And by the time the 26th rolled around, I really wanted to do something different. I was outside and saw that bottle rolling around in sort of a post-flood situation. Went back out with my field recorder and took video and audio of that, made that clip, put a little bit of Volca Modular under it. So let's take a look at 5 or 6 clips from the second half of the month, talk about the setup, the sound design, and some of the things that I learned from it. All right, so this first clip is going to be what I think of as the most jam-like of my posts for the month. It's got Volca FM, Volca New Bass, Volca Beats, and yet the thing that I really want to call attention to is that I'm using the Volca mix in it. And it's nice. You know, this thing's pretty expensive and people are critical of it, but I have one and I thought, why not try to use it really the way it was intended? And so I used it with the NTS1 for the reverb and a little bit of delay, and it was super nice because you can just use an aux cable to send out and back the effects and then control the effects for each of the 3 different instruments. And so I feel like that there's a lot to this and that I want to try and employ it more in some of the jam-like clips that I did. So check it out. Now, what do the Volca kick and the Volca drum have in common? Well, they both make me want to try to somehow fix their MIDI behavior by using external programming, external code. In the kick's case, well, it's nice because you can sequence melodies on it. MIDI notes that you send to it turn into the correctly pitched sounds, but it's really just got the one sound. So what I use the programming for in this case is to change that sound by sending a whole bunch of MIDI CC signals to the kick and then use touch effects and turn it into a little bit more of a multi-instrument. Take a listen. Now, the Volca drum, on the other hand, it has multiple sounds, a lot of great sound design potential on it, but it doesn't respond to MIDI notes correctly. All you can do with a MIDI note is just choose which sound you're going to play. It's not pitched in the right sense. So if you want to use it with a sequencer like the SQ1, it takes some external code to take the notes from the SQ1, convert those into the pitch parameter on the Volca drum, and basically end up with something that's pretty playable. I did one clip, I'm not going to show the whole thing, that sounded like this. And so this Jamuary is a little bit different for me. Last year I tried to do a different thing every single time, but in this case I came back to the same thing with the code, but tried to approach it a little bit differently, come up with more of a synth sound. I changed a little bit of the coding, and then I put it all through the slow reverb, and really feel like that some of the filtering towards the end of it was some of my favorite stuff from this second half of the month. So I think Jamuary is a pretty informal thing on Instagram, and I don't think there are really any rules about whether you should use just gear or no DAW or anything like that, but I do try to sort of stretch out and do some things that are different. And in the case of this next clip, I'm using the Bastl Kastle, but I'm controlling it by a program called ORCA on the computer that's coming out through a couple of SQ1s and CV control voltage into the Kastle and giving tune and some timbral changes. And the ORCA program, if you're not familiar with it, it's from the folks at 100 Rabbits. They seem quite interesting, live on a sailboat a lot and develop a lot of cool code, so that's worth checking out. I'll put a link down in the description. But ORCA is a very different sort of sequencer, and I'm not very familiar with it, but I've done two-dimensional programming languages before a little bit, and so gave it a shot. This is what I came up with. Now, one of my favorite things about Jamuary on Instagram is seeing other people's posts, and some of the coolest ones have been using this thing called Norns. That's something that I wanted to learn more about. I investigated it, saw that you can get a DIY version of it called the Norns Shield. So I bought one. I happen to have a Raspberry Pi sitting around that will become the brain of that. And the thing that I just showed with the Kastle ORCA, that'll run on there. And so I look forward to doing some other videos on this channel about Norns and ORCA and other forms of live coding like Sonic Pi. So this next clip is sort of a confession. I don't think I've ever hooked MIDI up to the Make Noise Zero Coast. It's very easy to do with the model cycles. Just an aux cable out from the cycles over into the Zero Coast, and you use a track on here. You can use a lot of the powerful features of the Electron sequencer, like conditional trigs. And so the Zero Coast in this case is more sort of ornamentation, and I make a timbral change along the way. I think they go really well together. Now, for this next clip, I use the Craft Synth 2.0 and the Roland SEO2. And you may want to get some headphones or put it on speakers because I'm really impressed by the lows that come out of the Craft Synth. And then after using the SEO2 for this clip, it really makes me want to do a video or two about this synth. Just one thing I'll point out is that I like how in this case I was able to use legato to get sort of a different synth sound for free, more subtle, and then if I picked up my fingers from the keys, I was able to get a very bright sound as well. So check that out. So now, this next clip with the PO-32 Tonic pocket operator was a ton of fun to make. First thing I did was make some sounds in Microtonic, which I have as a plugin for Ableton Live. Spent some time on that, and then I transported them. I just used the speaker this time. You know, you just send the data to the microphone on the Tonic. Worked very well, it was very easy. To me it seemed easier than doing the line in method. And I populated those sounds on the Tonic, but in a little bit of a different way. Normally I would try to put 16 different sounds on here, but in this case I put duplicates on it, particularly of sort of a lead sound and a couple of bass sounds, in order to try and get maybe some harmonies going. I don't think that the sound engine on the Tonic will let you do unlimited polyphony, but I do hear some things that are kind of chord-like in what I made. Now, that clarinet sound at the very end, it just sort of surprised me how up close that sounded, very much in your face. So really enjoyed working with the PO-32. Okay, so let's close this video out with the January 31st post that I did. There were a lot of sort of subtle setup things that I did that were different. I recorded some modular beats and bleeps onto the field recorder, and then I pitched that in Audacity, and then finally ended up recording that onto a cassette tape. And I did all that dry so that I had the option to add some reverb to it after the fact, which I did. So that's one side of this setup, and then the other side is the Arturia MicroFreak. And to capture it, I used this thing, which is a relatively inexpensive, it's Nady Audio MM242. It's a 4-channel stereo mixer, and can run on batteries, and I don't use it enough. And the thing that I like about it versus something like the Bastl Dude or whatever is that I was able to record it in stereo on this Tascam very basic field recorder and have the cassette come through on one channel, the MicroFreak come through on the other, and then that allows me after the fact to do panning and level adjustments in Audacity. So it's quite a bit of flexibility that I really want to try and employ in the future for this sort of setup. Now, on the MicroFreak, I use one of the new noise engineering patches, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that now because I'm working on a video that's about that very thing, and it will be out very soon. So thanks a lot for watching. Check this last clip out. Hope everybody's doing well. And so maybe this is a, gosh, Pip,